We're very excited to have back on to the show Jamie Cromwell and Pramilla Malick, and they're currently there. They are. Hello, welcome to the show.
Hi.
It's great to have you back on. And Pramilla, you're currently running for state senate in New York, and she's chair of the Protect Orange County. It's the group that's leading the fight against the CPV plant. And just so you know, what's happened most recently is that, James Cromwell and Pramilla have been protesting the CPV power plant construction for a while now. But what just happened is ex-aide to New York Governor Andrew Cuomo was recently found guilty of taking $300,000 in bribes, and most of them coming from the CPV power plant. So welcome to our guests, and tell us, last time we talked, this is a positive development that he's going to be going to jail. And now Cynthia Nixon, who is running against Andrew Cuomo from on his left, is now also talking about this issue. That has to make you excited, right?
It does. I mean, it's definitely a positive development. There's definitely a lot of pressure on the company. But, I was at the trial every day. And what I realized after sitting there every day and watching this is how ubiquitous the corruption is. There are 100 different ways in which these lobbyists and these big moneyed interests buy our politicians. The campaign donations are just one form. What we learned through the trial, in this trial, the company executive for this power plant apparently gave Joseph Percoco, Governor Cuomo's closest aide's wife, a no-show job for about $7,500 a month. And that lasted for years. And apparently that now is the most common way that lobbyists and these big companies now are corrupting our elected officials, is by offering their spouses no-show jobs. So that's apparently become a thing nationally. But this company, CPV, this is what they do everywhere they go. And they're building power plants throughout the country. So, the media kind of just ran with this narrative that it was all Cuomo and it was all corruption in his office. But, what you really learn is that it's bipartisan corruption, and the corruption is ubiquitous. And it not only plagues our government and has usurped our government, but also many of the institutions that we rely on to safeguard the public trust, like, for example, the media. There was a media blackout with this story because the media, so far, nobody has covered the power plant at the center of the corruption trial, which is very bewildering. Especially because the company's name and the power plant were referenced virtually every couple of minutes throughout this 8-week trial.
So you're telling me that while the media is covering the corruption aspect, because it's kind of sexy, somebody took a payout, but they're not actually covering the problem, which is the CPV power plant. Is that what you're saying?
They're covering the quid, but they're not covering the quo. So they are covering the fact that this person got, this state official, high-level state official, was bribed, but they're not covering what he was bribed for. He was bribed not only for the permits for this really dangerous frack gas power plant, but for changes in state energy policy. And what they did in New York State, they are actually doing on a national level. And there were references to that in the trial, that they are not only lobbying and corrupting the process in New York State, but also nationally. They're very active. They were very active in advocating for the Clean Power Plan. They're also active in initiating a lot of changes with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission's policies on rate regulation. So they are creating policies that are making us pay for their infrastructure, their very dangerous and toxic infrastructure projects. And all of these are going to have consequences for generations. I mean, energy policy truly is our climate policy, but it's also our public health policy, and it's our environmental policy. And all of that was sacrificed. All of that was compromised for this bribery money. And the media is not covering the biggest part of the story, which are the victims of the crime. Our community in Orange County are the victims of the crime. And, just as this power plant, just as this trial became underway in January of 2018, the power plant actually fired up. And people from as far as 8 to 10 miles away were getting sick. Yet nobody from the New York Times or the Washington Post or Politico or anywhere covered that. And that, and I sat next to a lot of these reporters. And every day I would, after listening to testimony about how this company sought to corrupt state officials, I would tell them, well, do you know that they just fired up? Do you know that people are getting sick? Do you know that that odors are being smelled and felt from miles and miles around? Do you know that an entire environmental city filled with environmental justice communities is being engulfed? And they were not at all interested in that aspect of the story. And it's really hard to explain it other than corruption and backdoor influence.
So the power plant, the CPV power plant. Now, the problems you have is not only that the pollution of it right there, but isn't it because it's powered by it's a frack gas power plant, and they don't get the frack gas from inside New York State, correct? Are they getting it from Pennsylvania, and then they have to transport it? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, they get the gas from towns like Dimmock, which have the county of Dimmock. They have 150 wells in this county. This power plant alone will need 150 new wells every year. And the infrastructure that goes along with those wells, the compressor stations, all the pipelines, and it is ruining the entire eastern part of Pennsylvania, destroying agriculture, killing animals. People are leaving their homes. All the devastation of the infrastructure, other than the leakage that occurs in the pipeline and the emissions from the plant, are where the gas is fracked. And that will be ruined and forever.
If you enjoyed this clip of Aggressive Progressives, you know there's a 90-minute show waiting for you at the Young Turks Network. Go to tytnetwork.com/join to see all our content.